Hello and welcome to another episode of Ian Dale All Talk. I'm Ian Dale. Today we're going to talk to an Olympic athlete. In London 2012 he won bronze in Taekwondo, and in 2016 in Rio he won silver but missed out on a gold medal by just 1 second. I remember interviewing him on my Drive Time show in 2016 and I just thought, what a lovely guy, and how did he cope with losing a gold medal? Well, he fully intended to be in Tokyo this year, but injury, I'm afraid, prevented him. But he's been doing commentary for the BBC and has been the absolute hit pundit of the Olympic Games. So he came into the LBC studio last week and he's just the most brilliant person. I've got so many texts and tweets from people saying I could listen to this guy speak all night long. Well, here's the interview. Given what's happened to a lot of the athletes in Tokyo, where we've had all sorts of success stories for British athletes, but then we've had some terrible scenes. I was watching yesterday morning when Katarina Johnson-Thompson in the heptathlon, she was really in contention for a medal, and in the 1500 metres, I think it was, she had a problem with her leg. I think she ruptured her Achilles, and you just think somebody's been building up to that for 5 years effectively, and that happens. And then you had the British 100 metres athlete who was disqualified because he started too quickly, and you think, how can that happen in the Olympic Games? And it doesn't. There's so many other things. You've had Simone Biles retiring from several of the gymnastic events which she would have been expected to win. So there's so much to talk about I think the pressure that is on modern day athletes. And then you have people saying, oh, well, if they can't cope with the pressure, they shouldn't be doing it. You're only a champion if you can cope with that kind of pressure, showing a complete absence of knowledge of the way the human brain operates. So I thought, let's get somebody who's been there at the sharp end and is still active in sport as well. And I thought back to 2016, and I remembered when I was presenting Drive, interviewing somebody who had won the silver medal in Taekwondo at the Rio Olympics. And I looked back at that interview yesterday, and I thought, I'm so glad he's coming in today, because he's also become a bit of a national figure in these Olympics, not because he's been taking part, but because he's been doing punditry and has received rave reports for the way that he's describing not just Taekwondo, but other events as well. And it is, of course, Latelo Mohammed. Latelo, I, as you say, I butchered your name earlier. Apologies
but
for
you
that.
got it right.
I got it right now.
You got it right when I was here, so that's all that matters.
Listen, for those of our audience who don't know you, I mean, and Taekwondo is one of those sports which, I mean, I've watched quite a lot of it in these Olympics, and I still haven't got the faintest idea what's going on. It's just quite a spectacle. But tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll come on to your experience in 2012 and 2016. Taekwondo, explain.
Well, Taekwondo is a...
Taekwondo, see, I can get that
wrong.
Oh,
no, none of us are Korean, so it's all good. It's a Korean martial art. And modern Taekwondo, as we see it today, is really most famous for dynamic head kicking. So it's the only Olympic sport where you won't get disqualified if you kick someone in the face. It's kind of the whole point. And we have a point system based on you kicking the body armor or the head guard, registering at certain pressure thresholds. And the more complicated the kick or the move that you do, that you execute, if it scores successfully, you can get more and more points. So it's very fast paced. Just 3 2-minute rounds. So it's a roller coaster of emotions and of physical exertion, all in 6 short minutes. So we have had a really good Olympics, and the reception's been amazing. And I think people are starting to really see that this is a very exciting, if not a bit weird, but a very exciting sport.
Well, it's a little bit weird, but given all of the publicity recently about footballers and rugby players and the brain damage that can happen in those sports, do you not worry about that side of it as well? That, I mean, you are essentially encouraged to kick people in the head, and that has to have surely an effect on the brain.
No doubt. I think the science about concussion and the effects of concussion is so much. It's very widespread right now, and I think taekwondo, like all contact sports, we have to take notice. Certainly at GB Taekwondo, I've seen the changes in concussion protocol. If you do take a hard knock to the head, you can't train for a period of time and until you pass a concussion protocol. So that's been some of the changes within the sport. But ultimately, my thing is, I guess there's been data showing that doing too many headers in a football can cause concussion, can be quite dangerous. So I'm saying there's going to be an element of danger, I think, with pretty much any sport you take up, especially if you take it to the professional level. I guess I just have to have faith in the world governing body doing their best with the concussion protocol and keeping up with the science with that. And I guess the idea for me is to not get kicked in the head too often. And thankfully,
I guess
I'm pretty good at that.
But in a sort of average month, how many kicks to the head would you take? I mean, I don't know how many times you would take part in it, but
well, I think like a hard kick to the head, you wouldn't really happen in training. Because the goal is not to knock people out in training. So in training, we hit pads a lot. And if we do aim for the head in a realistic situation, it's like you just miss or you just tap it. So you wouldn't really go full force until you actually get into a tournament competitive situation.
How did you get into it?
I got into it through my dad. So my dad taught me Taekwondo from the age of 3. It's the family business. Everyone in my family is a black belt. So we have our own gym in Hackney. It's still there to this day in Stoke Newington. And I think around the age of 9, I was watching the Sydney Olympics. And that was the first time Taekwondo had become an official Olympic sport. And I remember seeing they had like those wreaths go on the heads of the athletes and the gold medals being crowned. And my dad leaned over to me and said, "Yo, this could be you one day. You could go to the Olympics." And I always dreamed of the Olympics, not thinking I was going to get the opportunity to go, because some of my idols growing up were Michael Johnson, Daley Thompson, Linford Christie. So Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, they were Olympic champions as well. So I dreamed of the Olympics, but I didn't think it was going to be possible for me, or I just didn't really think on that level. When Taekwondo became an official Olympic sport, and after that conversation with my dad, that was it. We set the goal of going to Olympic Games, even worked out what age I'd be at around certain games, and the rest, as they say, is history.
And I imagine in, July 2005, when the London was announced for 2012, that must have been the goal.
Well, in all honesty, it wasn't the goal. I always had 2016 in my head as when I would probably get the opportunity to go. London was a dream, though. Growing up in East London, I saw the Olympic Stadium.
You're Walthamstow.
I'm Walthamstow, so
I
yeah.
used to live there.
Oh yeah. It's nice now. But I grew up, and I used to. I remember the scaffolding and the stage of the stadium being built up, and watching that and just dreaming about maybe one day competing there. Not realistically thinking it was going to happen. And I made the team 1 year before the London Games. I made Team GB for the first time.
When did you realise, though, that you were actually quite good at it?
That's a good question. I think I always knew I was better than most because I was always the best in my club. But I really felt like I could take it to the next level when I won my first major international, and that was the German Open when I was 16 years old.
Right. And
that was my coming out party as a junior. And after that, I really started to believe in myself a lot. Like, okay, I could take this all the way to the top because I beat the best in the world at my age group. So I can continue to do that.
And in terms of time commitment, I mean, we hear stories in different sports of how people dedicate themselves to it from the age of 7 or whatever. They train hours and hours every day. Is that the same in Taekwondo?
Yeah, it's the same in any sport. And I was very blessed to have 2 parents that supported my dreams. I used to go running before school. do everything at school, and after school I'll train with my dad, focus on taekwondo. And so yes, there wasn't really a day that I wasn't training. Saturdays as well, Sundays as well. Sometimes we used to travel and find other clubs, people I could spar, people I could test myself against. So my whole childhood, it was the major thing in my childhood.
But were there times when you thought, I wish I could have a normal childhood?
Absolutely. I think when I became a teenager, especially, I remember being 15, and when you're at that age, about 15, your friends start going to parties, they start meeting girls, and you want to get involved in all of that, obviously. And it was, sometimes difficult, but at the same time, I understood that the opportunity I had was huge. And when it came to girls, my dad said, if you go to the Olympics, you have to beat them off. So I was like, okay, that seems like a fair trade. And I'm happy to report. No, I'm joking. I would say when I became a teenager, maybe something, I wonder if I was just normal. However, it didn't last long. Because I had a lot of motivation within me as well. I really wanted to do this. I wanted to see if I could get to that level. I idolized great champions growing up. I used to see them like real life superheroes. So Jack Johnson, who was the first black heavyweight champion of the world from the early 1900s, Rocky Marciano, Sugar Ray Robinson, going all the way back and right up to the modern time. Mike Tyson was probably the biggest boxer in the world when I was a young man, and other combat sports. I'm a big MMA fan, kickboxing fan, so I always idolized these champions, and I wanted to be like them. And when you read a lot of their stories, they had to make sacrifices. So I understood that from a young age, that if I, sacrifice on some things here, it'll pay off later. And thank God it did.
You're 6'3". That presumably is a real advantage in taekwondo.
Well, yes, being tall is an advantage, but I'm actually not that tall for my category. Not these days. A lot of the guys are pushing like 6'7". There's a guy from Nigeria who's 6'9". Wow. Yeah. There's a guy taller than him. There's a guy. Well, I think he's, a shade off 7 foot in the heavyweight category.
But that's quite interesting because it's a Korean sport. Korean people aren't known for being 6 foot tall.
Hilariously, the tallest, the 7 foot I'm talking about is Korean.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a couple at least.
We can see why he's a Korean champion then.
Well, yes. I mean, it's we've noticed that change in the sport. Originally, everyone was you're 6'3" would have been a huge guy maybe as recently as 10 years ago. But what we've seen is national teams. The Chinese team is notorious for this, actually scouting across the country and finding the tallest athletic people they can find, and then teaching them taekwondo later. So they find people with the attributes and kind of put them on an intensive course. Very intensive, and they learn the taekwondo later. So that's how important national teams are finding being tall and being athletic. The taller you are, the longer your legs are, the more chance you have to be very good at taekwondo.
I'd be useless then because I'm similar height to you, but I've got short legs.
You got short legs?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can find something for you.
I don't think I could do it. No, I'm too old anyway. Interesting text here. It's from somebody who says, for a guy who kicks people in the head for a living, I'd love it if he'd read a CBeebies bedtime story to my kids. Amazing voice. I've been reading about your, we'll come on to this in a moment, but I've been reading a lot about people saying that your voice is just so soothing and that they'd love you to read bedtime stories. Have you been offered a contract?
I've not been offered a contract
yet. I think
yet.
you will be.
It seems that way because I've been noticing those tweets too, and it's very flattering. It's not something I ever thought could possibly be on my resume when I signed up to be a fighter, occasional bedtime storyteller. But we'll see. Indeed. Anything's possible.
Well, we're talking to Letele Mohammed. He's a taekwondo expert, a champion. We'll talk about the various Olympics that he's been involved in and why he hasn't been involved in these Olympics. Talking to Letele Mohammed, bronze medal winner, silver medal winner, and hopefully still a gold medal winner. Now, you're obviously not at the Tokyo Olympics because you're here and you've been commentating on it. Why not?
I got injured at the qualification. It's unfortunate. It happens. I was winning very handily as well. Then I injured my knee. Very small injury in the grand scheme of things. It was a tear, but it was a very low-grade tear. But once it happens, you've missed it. So I'm already back training and feeling very healthy. Ironically, I would have been ready for the games, but that's just not how the system works. It is what it is. I had to take a back step, but
how do you deal with that, though? When it happens, you instantly realise, presumably, well,
yes,
that's it.
Yes. I mean, when it happens, you're worried, first of all, like, okay, how bad is it? That was the first thing that went through my head. Then I think the realisation comes as the hours go on. The doctor looks at it and you realise I've pretty much missed my chance. I've got no chance of going to Tokyo now. And that was disappointing. After having a full year, I saw the lockdown as a plus because I had to. And that's kind of how I process problems anyway. I accept it for what it is, especially if it's outside of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. I accept it and I lean into it. So, okay, an extra year to get fitter, faster, stronger. Great. And things, were going well, but injuries happened and the timing was awful. I had to accept it and I had to lean into it. Thankfully, the BBC gave me a call and they said we're sorry about what happened. However, we'd still love you to be involved in the Olympics on the punditry side. And I jumped at the opportunity. And I think being able to engross myself into something new, which I'm passionate about, and still be able to talk about Taekwondo and support my friends from afar and kind of feel the ups and downs of an Olympics from the spectator side, the punditry side, it still gave me such a rush and such a thrill. And I'm very grateful because it's the best it could have been without actually going.
At what age do you reach your peak as a Taekwondo?
As a heavyweight, I would say mid-30s. So I'm 30 years old now. So I'm definitely.
So Paris, here we come.
Paris on paper will be my best performances.
You've spoken before about the fact that you really want to win that gold medal.
Oh yes.
You won bronze in 2012, silver in 2016. So it ought to have been written in the stars that
Absolutely.
you were going to win gold at these Olympics. Well, that clearly couldn't happen.
No.
I mean, how obsessed do you have to be though to really give yourself a great chance of getting gold in Paris?
You have to be all in. You can't be half in. You have to be all in, and what that means is every single session showing up that's none of the work. It's the intensity and effort you put into every single minute of that training session. So you're right, it has to be like an obsession because you have to give your best every single session, every single rep. And that's the attitude you have to have. If you decide, I'm just going to take it easy, then you've already ruined that training session. So you really have to be looking at getting better every single day. And the only way to do that is to commit fully. And it is difficult, but when you have a big goal and when you're committed to it, even the days where you're not feeling motivated, you'll still get up and do the work because you're committed to the long-term goal.
And you're committed to winning a gold. That's what I think is really interesting here. I was watching the women's pole vault earlier today, and we won a bronze medal there.
Yes.
And
Holly.
That's the one. I couldn't remember her name.
That's all right.
They put up on the screen all of the different championships that she's done over the last few years, and it was 4th, 6th, 7th, 5th, 4th, and you think she clearly wanted to win a medal. Now, obviously, she'd have loved to have got the gold. She nearly got the silver, but she was deliriously happy about getting the bronze. Now, Piers Morgan would probably regard that as a bit of a weakness, that she was just happy to settle for a medal. But it's not, is it?
It's absolutely not. Winning looks different for everybody. With the most respect, if I go into a taekwondo match, my winning is my idea of winning is winning that match, getting the gold medal. If I put you in a taekwondo match, surviving would probably be your idea of winning. and I say
with you, yeah.
Well, definitely if it was me, but don't worry. We're friends.
I'm looking at my producer, and I know what he's thinking. Right, let's get them in a ring.
Hey, we can make that happen.
No, we can't.
We'll discuss after the show. But I if that's not the best example, I just mean that for someone that's come in 6th, 5th, that getting onto the podium, that's amazing. She's won as far as I'm concerned. So winning really is just getting the best out of yourself. And if you know in your heart of hearts that on your best day you can win the gold medal, then absolutely go for that. And I think you should always go for gold, because I've been for gold twice, and I got a bronze the first time and a silver. So I think you should always aim as high as you can, and just as long as you do your best. But in that situation, absolutely no. That bronze is a magnificent result.
Let's go back to 2012, which I went to that marvellous night on the Saturday night when Mo Farah, Jessica Ennis, Greg Rutherford won their gold
Super
medals.
Saturday.
That will always be one of the highlights of my life. It was just amazing. Me too. What was it like being a competitor?
Walking out for my first Olympic Games in London, it was unbelievable because the noise was so loud. I remember turning around to my coach to speak to him, and I couldn't hear the sound of my own voice. And
you're very softly spoken.
Well, I felt like I was shouting, but the noise was unbelievable. And London 2012 really showed me the power of home support. It is an advantage in the most magnificent way.
And where were you competing?
At the XL Arena.
Right.
So, yeah.
Which is a pretty soulless place, actually.
Yeah.
But
it was on fire that day. And all throughout the Olympics, it was amazing. And my biggest memories are, competing, the rush of it, obviously losing in the semi-finals and having to come back and fight for a bronze in the repechage, some very hard fights, and just that feeling of relief. So of when I knew I secured the bronze medal, it was just an amazing feeling that I'll never forget. Just knowing that my contribution to Taekwondo is now etched in history forever.
And did you think that you would win a medal? I mean, obviously you wanted to, but you actually were confident.
I was going for gold. And this is what I'm saying. I feel like I know what you're saying. This kind of mad obsession, win at all cost mentality that's been so prominent in sport really as long as we've known it, certainly in modern times. And is that healthy? What does that do to someone? And I think it's all about balance, and it's all about being honest with yourself. Some people who are at the Olympics are there, and you see it maybe from some of the smaller nations, just getting the tracksuit, just being an Olympian, that's a gold medal to them. Some people who are blessed with the talent, who are on the right team, have the right people around them, had the right upbringing, the right genetics, like myself, gold is a real reality. So why not chase it? Why not chase it? And one of the biggest things that I learned from this cycle and missing this Olympics was, and in truth, I really learned it after losing in the last second in Rio 2016, but this reaffirmed it, was I'm always going to go for gold, and I'm always going to strive for it. That's just who I am. However, missing out last time and not being able to go this time really taught me that if I don't get it, I'll be fine. And I don't say it like to give myself a safety net. That's just honest. That's just my mentality. That's honestly how I feel.
Do you think that that comes with age? That you
definitely.
If you were 22 now rather than 30,
we'll be having a different conversation. Yeah. At 22, I would have said, I'll be desperately unhappy if I never win the gold medal, because that's what all my life has been focused to. Me and my dad set this goal when I was 9 years old. Are you crazy? Why, if I never get it, then I'm a failure. All those years have been for nothing.
Because there was the boxer, was it Ben Whittaker?
Yes, Ben Whittaker, that's correct.
He effectively, he stuffed his silver medal in his pocket because he felt that he'd let the country down. I mean, and you look at that and you think, mate, you're the second best in the world.
I know, but I know exactly how it feels. Because when I lost in Rio, that was my feeling. That, oh my goodness, I've let them down in the last second. Because we have this whole thing in this country about bring it home. And athletes, you absorb that energy. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of the time, we put unbelievable amounts of pressure on themselves and on ourselves, more than anyone else could, externally could.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that kind of pressure in just a few moments' time. Talking to Lotolo Mohammed, silver medal winner in Rio. I'm afraid I'm going to do to you what I did to you 5 years ago and play you what you said immediately after you missed out on the gold medal by 0.1 seconds. Let's play the clip.
I'm so distraught. I'm so sorry for the people that stayed up late to watch and cheer me on. Let them down at the last second. I'm so sorry, this is so hard. And I'm so distraught to be on the losing end here. I have to wait 4 years for another chance.
I remember watching that live and just, I mean, I cry at anything, but I was like the rest of the country, I was in floods of tears. I mean, do you think it's cruel, actually, for broadcasters to interview people immediately after they come out of the ring?
I thought about this, and yes and no, because in one sense, I think it's kind of good that you get an opportunity to air your emotions, your frustrations, kind of get it out. However, the downside is that there's, like in that case, there's millions of people watching you while you're at your most painful moment. So I'm not sure, but either way, it happened there in 2016, and for me, I'm glad it did because of that. I was able to express my emotions and say things that I was just so in the moment. I wasn't even thinking. What you saw there was this raw, uninterrupted reaction to losing in the last second. So for me, I believe everything happens for a reason, and evidently that was just how it was meant to be for me.
When you hear that, and you must have heard it so many times now, do you think, well, I'm glad I don't feel embarrassed about it, I don't cringe at it at all, I actually really embrace it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, now I'll be brutally honest, it's slightly embarrassing because, you know,
you shouldn't be embarrassed.
Yeah, but I don't know.
What, because you're a man and you cried?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Maybe a little bit, but no, it's there's no I don't feel sad, and I'm comfortable enough to listen to it because I've accepted it. It did happen, and I can't hide from it.
But it also happened to Jay Jones this time, didn't it?
Bianca.
Sorry, of course you're absolutely right. But you were commentating on the BBC on this, and she lost out literally in the last few seconds as well. And you walked off set.
Yes, because in that moment, I knew exactly what she's going through. The pain, the feeling of being alone. And I felt, I mean, Bianca had it tough there because she had to pick herself up and fight for a bronze medal. Yeah. However, mine was the actual Olympic final. So someone was trying to ask me which one was worse. I think, well, I don't know. They both suck. That's what we can definitely agree on. Yeah. But that is really the sport of Taekwondo. 1 second can completely change people's whole destinies, it seems, and that's what the sport brings.
And I'm trying to think of another sport where that happens.
I can't think of one.
I mean, you were quite a few points ahead, even with like 10 seconds to go.
That's right. Yeah. My opponent, he only had, similar to Bianca, there was only one thing he could have done to have taken it away from me, and he did it. And same with Bianca, there was only one thing she could have done, which was get that headshot, and she did it. So you have to give credit to both our opponents. They able to keep their cool under those kind of circumstances, high stakes, high pressure, and managed to pull it out of the bag. So yeah, I'm able to think and analyze it non-emotionally, but certainly felt that pain for Bianca, because in that moment she's not had the luxury of 5 years of perspective like I do. So she's right in the moment. So that's why, I took a moment, because I felt bad for her.
And you came out with a great line on another occasion in the studio, where you said, "Fear is a fire. It can be used for good, to cook food or heat up your home, or it can get out of control and burn your house down." Sadly, that's what happened. What's happened to Jade?
Yes,
that was Jade.
Yeah, that was Jade. Yeah, that was Jade. Jade, a double Olympic champion, and what I think a lot of people maybe failed to realize going into this one is that the first one she won, she had no pressure on her at all. She was a 19-year-old young girl going to her first Olympics. Nobody was looking at her, and she went and won. Amazing. Unusually, though, somehow, perhaps just because Taekwondo's still a growing sport in this country, she went into Rio under similar circumstances, slipped under the radar. You didn't see Jade Jones on any banners, any commercials. She wasn't like, Laura Kenny or, Jessica Ennis, nothing like that. She snuck under the radar again and did the business. This time around, she was everywhere. BBC documentaries about her, commercials, huge sponsorship endorsements, all international. She's on posters with Anthony Joshua. There's now the expectation. And Jade she's a home girl. She's a family girl. She comes from a small village in Wales called Flint. She's always got her family around her. At these Tokyo Games, no spectators are allowed. Her family normally her family, it feels like the whole of Flint flies out to wherever she competes in the world. And Jade admitted that she feels fear. She always feels fear. But she can look into the crowd and see her granddad, see her mother, who have supported her since she was a little girl, and she was able to combat that fear. This time, she had the weight of expectation, what felt like the weight of the world on her shoulders. So she had that compounded by the natural fear you feel, that she admits she feels. She didn't see her family in the crowd, and she just said, "Look, I felt scared out there." And I still feel like she put in a heck of a performance against a very, very good opponent. That opponent actually beat her previously. So it was a very good opponent, but it was an opponent where Jade would have had to have been at her 100% absolute best. And she'll admit that she wasn't. And those are the circumstances. And I think I was very impressed with her honesty, because it's hard for a champion, someone that's won everything in the sport like Jade, to admit when you're scared. But similar to what we've seen with Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, one of the positive things about this new era of sports and athletes, is athletes feel more comfortable talking about their real feelings. You'd never have seen that in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s.
It would have been a sign of weakness, or it would have been seen as a sign of weakness.
100%, absolutely. He's slipping. Oh, he's admitting he feels scared. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Or she's gone crazy. How could she say that? But we're seeing this really, and it's come to the forefront in the last, I would say, year and a half, especially.
We'll come on to that in a moment, but I also wanted to ask you about, you mentioned Jay Jones's support network.
Yes.
What's your support network? I mean, you clearly must have a coach or a team of coaches. How does it all work?
Well, you're only as good as your team. So I have a great coach in Steve Jennings. I have a sports psychologist that I work with. I'm a big fan of Dr. Steve Peters and the chimp model of thinking. Very.
I have no idea what that is.
Okay. Well, you should check it out. How to Manage Your Chimp, but Dr. Steve Peters, because we've all got one. He essentially explains the mechanism of the brain in a very simple and easy way to understand. And so the emotional side, you're called a chimp. So obviously you can go into extreme detail, but it's a very good read, and I would highly recommend Dr. Steve Peters, and it'll help you understand, I think, more about elite sport and how just performance in general. So there's a nutritionist performance and analysis, which is watching fights and recognizing patterns and formulating strategy. So it's almost like a government of people.
You're the Prime Minister.
I'm the Prime Minister, the President, the King, the Big Daddy. I'm all of those things. I'm the boss. However, I'm none of those things without the amazing team I have backing me up. So it's so crucial to have a good support network, and absolutely the foundation of all that is my family, my mum and my dad.
Apart from your family, it must cost quite a lot of money. I mean, you presumably get lottery funding.
Yes, and thank God for the National Lottery. I'm very grateful to the National Lottery because it's allowed me to do what I do, focus on my sport solely. And we wonder why we've seen a massive increase in medals from Team GB really since about Beijing going onwards, and it's the National Lottery funding, because athletes now don't have to have a part-time job.
If you look back to 1996, was that Athens?
That's Atlanta, 96.
Atlanta, and we won virtually nothing.
Nothing. Now, I think maybe a rowing.
And the National Lottery, I think, came in around then, didn't it? Or just slightly before then. And it has made such a difference.
A massive difference at the grassroots level as well, because I believe some of the money streams down to the certain development clubs, and ensures that we have a good pathway. So the National Lottery has been a godsend for GB athletes all across the world, all across the Britain. And I think it's a great way for people who are not athletes to know that you can support your athletes just by buying a lottery ticket.
Yeah. Well, if John Major's listening, I think that's his biggest legacy, isn't it, actually?
Yes.
Well, certainly from your point of view.
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you were 6 when he left office.
Yeah, well, but hey, it paid off, man.
Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the psychology of sport in just a moment. Now, listen, let's talk a little bit about the psychology of sport, because you said you have a sports psychologist.
Yes.
What is that person's job description? What are they there to do?
They're there to aid elite performance, and Dr. Peters, I think, would describe it as helping his athletes be at their at 90% and up every single time, and that requires a serious commitment. That requires a lot of work, a lot of experience. But if you can perform at 90% of your capacity every single time you can compete, that's pretty impressive stuff. And it goes to show how much of it is mental, how much of it is controlling your emotions and learning. One of the key things for me was being honest about my thoughts. As a fighter, we spoke about that old school mentality earlier on. Admitting that maybe when you do feel a bit nervous, admitting when you do feel, like Jade said, maybe a bit scared. And it's being honest with yourself that these are totally understandable thoughts, because you're going in a ring to fight another man whose sole objective is to hit you in the head as hard as he can. It's normal to be a bit nervous and have butterflies. But when I was, yes, and rightly so. It's because you're not a maniac, for crying out loud. You're perfectly sane.
I have my moments.
Oh, well, so do I. But so that was it for me, because my whole mindset was, I can never admit any weakness, not even to myself. So I'll try and shove it to one side. But before you know it, you get into a high pressure situation like a fight, and some of those thoughts, now they're really unhelpful because you're in a fight.
Do you think a psychologist in the field of sport is more important for people who are doing sort of one-on-one competitions rather than in team sports? Or do you think that they are vital for anybody in elite sport?
Vital for anybody in elite sport, because with a team, that's more people that you've got to work with, more personalities, more emotions, and you got the emotion of someone not putting in work, and you got the emotion, am I good enough for this team? Am I doing my job correctly? Am I doing my role correctly? So anything in elite sport, anything in elite performance, I would argue, whether that's if you're a businessman, whether you're working a job, if you're working on the radio, elite performance is beneficial to anybody. So I think that's crucial.
I don't know why I've suddenly thought of this, but I don't know if you're familiar with a footballer called Ravel Morrison.
Yes.
Who everybody that's played with him has said he's one of the most talented footballers they've ever played with. But he's got a self-destruct mode, and he's admitted this himself. And I saw him do a podcast recently. I can't remember which one. And he was on for an hour doing an interview rather like this. And he came across as such a well-balanced individual. And you think, well, how come you haven't reached your potential? Can a sports psychologist make that difference to somebody?
I think so. I think but at the end of the day, it's you that has to do the work. A sports psychologist can facilitate you and kind of lead you in the right direction. But if you don't buy in, if you don't commit, then nothing will change. If you don't change, nothing will change. But a sports psychologist hopefully can guide you in the right direction.
What have you got out of doing the punditry? Because you clearly enjoy it. You've had rave reviews. I think the BBC have asked you to now do some boxing commentary, haven't they? Because you clearly love your boxing.
I love my boxing. I love all combat sports, all sports really. But I've gotten so much out of it. What's been the nicest thing I've heard is not just the compliments, which have been extremely flattering, but it's the people that say, I'd never watched Taekwondo in my life. I didn't know anything about it, but your punditry allowed me to understand it, and I stayed. I kept on viewing, and I kept watching more Taekwondo, and discovered a new sport that I now like. So that, for me, is amazing. That there's new Taekwondo fans around this country, and I love that this country gets behind its Taekwondo athletes, because it's a Korean martial art. We have no business being so good at it, but we are, and that's a real anomaly. And it's a beautiful thing that we're getting support. And yeah, I just am very grateful, and a huge thank you to everyone that sent me a lovely message, or if you're listening and you enjoyed my punditry, I really, really appreciate it. It really means a lot.
Is it something that, you said earlier that you reach a peak in this sport in your mid-30s?
Yes.
Is it something that you've decided that, well, after that, I might want to do this full time? Because you clearly 100%. Have a talent for it.
Yes. I love the TV on-camera work. I love being on the radio as well. So I would actually like to do some during this cycle, just like kind of part-time, if I can get some opportunities. And I think long-term, hopefully, you'll see me coming back to a screen near you.
Well, you've got a voice for radio as well. Maybe we could have Latelo Mohammed leading Britain's conversation at some point. I
would love it if we could make it happen. LBC, best station in the nation.
We'll be using that.
Oh, yes, sir.
But do you worry about when you won't be able to compete at such a high level again?
No. I feel like I'm extremely blessed to have come as far as I've come. To be a little boy and to set goals with your parents, and to go to Olympics and to win Olympic medals, to compete all over the world and win various other major medals. I'm already so happy and so content with my career. I'm extremely grateful that if my career ended tomorrow, I just feel very blessed and happy. So that's what I mean. That's the state of mind I'm in.
So you wouldn't have said that when you were 22?
I wouldn't have said that when I'm 22, but I can say that now at age 30, that I believe the gold medal is in my future. I believe it's in my destiny. But if it's not, then so be it. I'll say thank you to the man upstairs, be very grateful for my career, and gracefully transition into the next stage.
3 years to Paris. Does the work for that literally start next week?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And I feel like I just feel so ready to attack this cycle with my full energy, heart and soul. And I'm excited. I'm really excited. I can't wait to make this happen.
And in terms of time commitment, in a normal week in your training, how many hours do you spend doing it?
It depends on which day. As an older athlete now, a lot. I would say I will spend 2 hours doing taekwondo, for example, but a lot of the stuff is around recovery, because I know how to kick, I know how to fight. As long as I just need to get the strategy right before each tournament, and the recovery, making sure that I do the cryotherapy, get the physiotherapy, all the therapies. That's the most important thing at this stage, is kind of maintaining and make sure that I'm in great shape going into each tournament.
Who do you practice against? Because they must be mad.
Well, thankfully we've got many mad people at taekwondo that are more than happy, and they give as good as they take. So I'm well facilitated here at GB Taekwondo.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you for the last hour. I know our listeners will have enjoyed it very much, and we'll put this out on my All Talk podcast at some point in the next few days if you've missed any of it. Taylor, best of luck in the future. We expect you to win gold in Paris.
That's all good, because so do I.
We'll definitely have you back after you do that, I can tell you.
I can't wait.
You've been listening to a Global Original podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please do leave a review wherever you get your podcasts from, as it helps other people to find us. I host 5 other podcasts which I hope you might like to try out too. For the Many with Jackie Smith, The Prime Ministers, The Ian Dale Book Club, Cross Question, and Ian Dale The Whole Show. And of course you can listen to my LBC show live from 7 to 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday on FM in London, on digital radio across the UK, or all over the world on Global Player or your smart speaker. See you next time. Goodbye.